Imagine you're the best at your job, the absolute best, not because you're strong or fast or ruthless, but because you see the cracks other people miss. You read between the lines of code and corpses. Now imagine your government hands you a data slate. Simple mission. Secure the file. Don't read it. Don't question it. Just get it. And the moment you crack the encryption, you realize the file isn't data. It's a name. Your name. This is the story of the woman who was sent to steal her own death warrant. And what she did when she found out the universe had already signed. The transit pod hummed beneath Kaylin's boots, a low, resonant thrum that vibrated up through her shins and settled in her teeth. Outside the rain-streaked viewport, New Mercury's Skybridge district slid past in ribbons of neon and gray. She watched a cargo hauler drift between two residential spires, its running lights blinking a lazy, indifferent rhythm. She'd been in this pod 1,000 times. Same route, same rattle in the third rail joint, same faint smell of recycled air and someone's abandoned synth coffee on the seat behind her. Same lies. Her comm unit pulsed once against her wrist, a single green flash. The kind that meant acknowledgement only. No response required. She didn't look down. She never looked down at the comm unit when it flashed green. That was the first rule they taught you in the Bureau of Strategic Intelligence's Wetworth Division. Green means eyes forward. Green means you're a ghost, and ghosts don't check their messages. The pod decelerated, magnetic brakes, squealing a soft apology, and she stepped off on a platform 7 green. The air was colder here. Sharper. Less recycled. More like the real thing, if you ignored the faint chemical undertone that all domed cities had. She pulled her jacket collar up, not because she was cold, but because the collar had a microwave reflector sewn into the lining. Old habit. Old paranoia. The kind that kept you alive when the person next to you on the escalator turned out to be a retinal tracer. She walked past the noodle stall where the vendor always pretended not to recognize her, past the news kiosk where the headlines screamed about the latest border skirmish with the Verity Collective. 12 billion dead. Diplomats silent. Humanity holds the line. She didn't read the headlines. She'd written half of them, in a way. The truth was always buried 3 layers deeper, behind a firewall and a false flag operation and a corpse that no one would ever find. The rendezvous point was a maintenance access junction in the sublevels, 3 floors below the main transit concourse. She took the stairs. Elevators had cameras. Elevators had weight sensors and audio pickups and a dozen other tiny little betrayals that she personally helped design 5 years ago, back when she still believed the Bureau used those tools for the right reasons. The stairs were dark. The emergency lighting cast everything in a sickly amber glow, the kind that made her think of old photographs and older regrets. A figure waited by the junction box. Tall, lean, face hidden behind a standard issue Enviro hood. The kind anyone could buy at any corner market for 12 credits. You're late, the figure said. Voice modulator. Standard issue. The pitch was too flat, too even. It could have been anyone. A man. A woman. A Verity spy wearing human skin. On New Mercury, you never assumed. You're early, Kaylin replied. Which means you're nervous. Which means this isn't a standard retrieval. A pause. The figure's gloved hand rested on the junction box, fingers tapping once, twice, 3 times. A nervous tick. Or code. She watched the fingers. The rhythm was wrong for code. Just nerves, then. The asset is in a secure data vault on the Verity diplomatic barge, the figure said. The Ancestor's wing. It's currently in geosync above the Meridian Exclusion Zone. The Verity are using it as a mobile negotiation platform. 3 layers of security. 2 rotating guard shifts. 1 AI sentry system with adaptive counter-intrusion protocols. Kaylin nodded slowly. Sounds like a Tuesday. The figure didn't laugh. They never did. The data is a file. The figure continued. Designation, Echo 79er. It contains tactical disposition reports from the border. Fleet movements. Troop deployments. If the Verity decrypt it, they'll know every weakness in our defensive line. So why haven't they decrypted it already? Another pause. Longer this time. The figure's hood shifted slightly, as if they were looking over their shoulder at something only they could see, because they don't know they have it. One of our sleepers on the barge hid it in a dead drop partition. He's about to be rotated out. In 48 hours, a Verity maintenance sweep will find the partition and crack it open. You have until then. Kaylin, tilted her head. 48 hours to infiltrate a Verity diplomatic vessel, bypass 3 layers of security, and extract a file that our own people hid there in the first place. Why didn't the sleeper just destroy it? The figure's gloved fingers tapped again. Top, 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 top. Because the sleeper is dead. He was found this morning. The Verity don't know about the file yet, but they're searching. They know there was a leak. They just don't know where. Kaylin felt the familiar cold settle into her chest. The cold that came before a mission. The cold that said you might not come back from this one. What's the insertion vector? The barge is running a resupply drone from the surface at 0300. Standard cargo manifest. Water filtration parts, medical supplies, and fresh produce. You'll replace a crate of avocados. The drone has a maintenance crawl space. It's tight, but you'll fit. She almost smiled. Tight, but you'll fit. That was Bureau shorthand for you'll spend 6 hours folded like origami, and you'll like it. Extraction. Same vector. The drone returns at 0600. You'll be back on the surface before the Verity finish their morning tea ceremony. And the file. The figure reached into a pouch and pulled out a small data spike. Black. Unmarked. The kind that held a single-use decryption key. This will get you past the AI sentry. Once you have the file, plug it into the spike and bring it back. Don't read it. Don't copy it. Don't even look at the file name. Understood. Kaylin took the spike. It was warm from the figure's body heat. A small, human detail that felt almost obscene in a place like this. Understood. She turned to leave. Kaylin. She stopped. Didn't look back. This one matters, the figure said. The voice modulator slipped for just a second, and she heard something underneath. Something raw. Something almost afraid. They all matter, she said. And she meant it. And she hated that she meant it. She walked back up the stairs, into the neon, and the noise, and the lies, and she didn't look back. Not once. The drone was exactly as described. A battered cargo hauler with more patches than original hull. Its atmospheric thrusters coughing out a thick plume of steam as it settled onto the loading platform at 0257. 3 minutes early. Kaylin noted the deviation. In her line of work, early was just as suspicious as late. She was already in position, wedged behind a stack of pallets near the loading bay's east wall. The uniform chafed against her shoulders. A Verity maintenance technician's coverall, stolen from a laundry chute 3 hours ago. The fit was wrong. The Verity had narrower shoulders and longer arms, and the fabric pulled across her back in a way that would be noticeable if anyone looked too closely. No one looked too closely. That was the secret to this kind of work. People saw the uniform, not the person inside it. They saw the badge, the color, the category. They didn't see the way her pulse hammered against her ribs or the way her fingers twitched toward the ceramic blade hidden in her boot. The drone's loading ramp hissed open, and a Verity dock worker emerged. He was young, maybe 19. His scales were still the pale green of adolescence, and he moved with the awkward, over-earnest precision of someone who just finished training and hadn't yet learned that most of the rules were lies. Kaylin stepped out from behind the pallets. She kept her head down. Her gait was unhurried. She carried a data slate in one hand, pretending to review a manifest. The slate was real. She'd lifted it from a maintenance locker an hour ago, and the manifest was convincing enough to pass a cursory glance. The young Verity looked up. His eyes were large, dark, and unblinking. Verity didn't blink the way humans did. It was one of the first things they taught you in cross-PC psychology. They don't blink. Don't wait for it. Don't let the absence of it throw you off. Maintenance check, Kaylin said, her accent carefully modulated. She'd spent 6 months learning Verity phonetic patterns. The trick was to flatten the vowels and swallow the consonants. Human speech was too sharp, too percussive. Verity sounded like water over stones. Smooth, round, deceptive. The young dock worker tilted his head. A gesture that meant proceed in Verity body language, but also carried a secondary connotation of I am watching you. She walked up the ramp. The interior of the drone smelled like ozone and old vegetables. Crates were stacked in neat rows, secured with magnetic straps. She found the avocado crate. 3rd row, 2nd stack, marked with a tiny yellow that was invisible unless you knew to look for it, and crouched down. The crate was heavier than it should have been. She popped the seal and lifted the lid. The avocados were real, nestled in foam padding, but the bottom of the crate had been hollowed out. A false floor. Beneath it, a space just large enough for a human body folded into the fetal position. She climbed in. The foam padding smelled like dirt and something else. Something metallic. She didn't have time to identify it. She pulled the lid closed. The magnetic seal engaged with a soft click, and then there was only darkness and the thrum of the drone's engines and the slow, suffocating awareness that she was now entirely dependent on strangers and machinery and luck. The drone lifted off at 0301. Kaylin counted her breaths. In, out, in, out. The space was so tight that her chest could barely expand. Each inhale was a small victory. Each exhale a small surrender. She thought about the file. Echo 7-9er. She'd never heard that designation before, and she'd heard most of them. The Bureau had a naming convention for sensitive intel. Echo meant tactical. 7 meant priority level. 9er meant... She stopped. 9er meant containment breach imminent. She'd only seen that designation once before. 5 years ago, on a file that had led to the sterilization of an entire colony world. 43,000 civilians. Gone in a single night. The official report called it a catalytic atmospheric event. She called it murder. Don't read it. Don't copy it. Don't even look at the file name. But she'd already looked. The name was burned into her memory, and now her memory was burning with questions she couldn't answer. The drone shuddered. Docking clamps engaged. The ride was over. She waited. Counted to 60. Counted again. The lid opened. A Verity face peered down at her. Older this time. Scarred. The scales on his left cheek were a mottled gray, the mark of a plasma burn, old and healed. He wore an officer's insignia on his collar. 3 silver bars. Security Division. Kaylin's hand moved toward her boot. The ceramic blade was warm against her fingers. The Verity officer stared at her for a long moment. Then he looked away, deliberately, pointedly. He reached down, picked up a single avocado from the crate, and placed it in a satchel at his hip. The produce is acceptable, he said in flawless, unaccented human English. Proceed to the secondary storage bay for inspection. He turned and walked away. Kaylin lay in the crate, her heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. He saw me. He definitely saw me. And he didn't do anything. She climbed out of the crate. The secondary storage bay was 30 meters to her left, through a pressure door and down a short corridor. The officer was gone. The dock was empty. She walked. The pressure door hissed open, and she stepped into a corridor that looked like it belonged on a luxury liner, not a diplomatic barge. The walls were paneled in something that looked like wood, but was probably a Verity polymer designed to mimic the forests of their homeworld. Soft amber light spilled from hidden sources. The air smelled like cinnamon and rain. She'd read about Verity aesthetics. They build their ships to feel like home. Because for them, every journey is a leaving, and every leaving is a small death. She shook the thought away. She couldn't afford poetry. Poetry got you killed. The secondary storage bay was a large, open space filled with more crates, more supplies, more lies. A single Verity technician sat at a console near the far wall, her back to Kaylin. Her scales were deep, rich green. Older, wiser. The kind of green that came from decades of service and the slow accumulation of small betrayals. Kaylin walked past her. The technician didn't look up. The data vault was on the 4th deck, behind a security door that required 3 separate biometric confirmations. The spike in her pocket contained the override codes. She inserted it into the door's access port and waited. Beep, beep, beep. The door opened. The vault was small, smaller than she'd expected. A single room, no larger than a closet, with a data pedestal in the center and nothing else. No chairs, no windows, no air vents. The kind of room designed for one purpose and one purpose only, to hold secrets. She walked to the pedestal. Her boots made soft, echoing sounds on the metal floor. The sound of a human being in a place where no human being was supposed to be. She plugged the spike into the pedestal. The interface flickered to life, displaying a directory tree. She navigated to the hidden partition. Found a file. Echo 7-9er. Asterisk. She hesitated. Don't read it. Don't copy it. Don't even look at the file name. Too late for that. She opened the file. The screen filled with text. Dense. Technical. Military jargon. She scanned it quickly, looking for key phrases, looking for the shape of the lie beneath the words. And then she saw it. Her name. Subject. Kaylin Vasquez, Senior Operative, BSI Wetwork Division. Designation. Asset 734. Current threat level. Omega. Containment protocol. Immediate termination upon retrieval of file. Method. Lethal neurotoxin, delivered via data spike contact. Onset. 3 to 5 seconds. Fatality. 100%. No antidote. Asterisk. She looked down at her hand. The spike was still plugged into the pedestal. Her fingers were still wrapped around it. Her skin was still touching the surface. 3 to 5 seconds. She counted. 1, 2, 3. Nothing happened. 4, 5. She was still standing, still breathing, still alive. She pulled the spike out of the pedestal and held it up to the light. There was a tiny scratch on the casing. A hairline fracture, almost invisible. She ran her thumb over it. The toxin delivery system had been damaged. Maybe during transport. Maybe during the manufacturing process. Maybe by the dead sleeper in his final moments, as an act of defiance against the people who'd sent him to die. She didn't know. She didn't care. She only knew that the Bureau had just tried to kill her, and they failed. She copied the file to her personal storage implant, a small chip behind her left ear, illegal as hell, the kind of thing that would get her executed if anyone ever found it, and then wiped the pedestal's access logs. She walked out of the vault. The Verity technician was still at her console, still not looking up. The officer with the scarred cheek was nowhere to be seen. She made it back to the drone, back into the avocado crate, back to the surface, and when she stepped off the loading platform and into the neon-lit streets of New Mercury, she didn't go to the rendezvous point. She didn't deliver the spike. She didn't report in. She went to a bar, a dark bar, the kind of bar where people went to forget things. She ordered a drink. She didn't drink it. She sat in the corner, her back to the wall, her hand resting on the ceramic blade in her boot, and she thought about the file, about the name, about the cold, careful math of the Bureau that had decided she was more valuable dead than alive. And she smiled. It was not a nice smile. The bar was called The Last Stop. It was a dive, the kind of dive where the floor was sticky and the air was thick with the smell of synthale and desperation. The kind of dive where no one asked questions because everyone had answers they didn't want to give. Kaylin sat in the corner for 3 hours. She watched the door. She watched the bartender. She watched the two Verity merchants arguing in low, hissing tones at the end of the bar. She watched the human woman in the red coat who'd come in alone and left with someone she shouldn't have. She didn't drink. The toxin spike sat on the table in front of her. She'd wrapped it in a napkin, as if the cloth could contain the betrayal. As if a thin layer of recycled paper could hold back the knowledge that the people she'd given her life to had just tried to end it. Why? She ran through the possibilities. Old mission. Loose end. She'd seen too much, done too much, knew too much. That was the most likely answer. The Bureau didn't retire assets. They retired problems. And a problem with Kaylin's skill set, Kaylin's knowledge, Kaylin's access, that was a problem that needed a permanent solution. But the timing bothered her. The method bothered her. A toxin spike was personal, intimate, the kind of kill you used when you wanted to be sure, when you wanted to watch the light go out in someone's eyes. Someone wanted to be there. Someone wanted to see me die. She thought about the figure in the maintenance junction, the nervous fingers, the voice modulator that had slipped just for a second, revealing something raw and afraid. This one matters. Not this mission matters. Not this file matters. This one, meaning her, meaning Kaylin. The figure had known. The figure had been sent to deliver the spike, to send her on a mission that was really in execution. And that raw, afraid voice underneath the modulator. That wasn't fear of failure. That was guilt. She pulled out her comm unit. The green light was still flashing. A reminder that she was supposed to be a ghost. A reminder that ghosts didn't check their messages. She checked her messages. 17. All from the same encrypted channel. All marked urgent. She opened the most recent one. Report immediately. Status update required. Failure to respond will be considered a breach of protocol. Sanctions will follow. She almost laughed. Sanction. As if they were talking about a late library book. As if the word sanctions could cover the reality of what they try to do to her. She closed the messages, turned off the comm unit, pulled the battery out, and crushed it between her thumb and forefinger. The plastic cracked, and a small wisp of smoke rose from the broken casing. No more green light. No more ghost. She was done. She found him 3 hours later. His name was Soren Vex. He was a data broker, the best on New Mercury. The kind of man who could find the truth in a mountain of lies, provided you paid his fee and didn't ask where he got his information. His office was in the underbelly of the city, 3 levels below the transit concourse, in a district that didn't appear on any official map. The walls were lined with old-fashioned paper books, an affectation she knew because Soren didn't read. He hoarded. He collected. He surrounded himself with the artifacts of a world that no longer existed because the real world, the digital world, was too easy to manipulate. "Kalen," he said, not looking up from his console. His voice was a low rasp, the result of a throat injury he'd never explained and she'd never asked about. "You're supposed to be dead. So I've heard." He swiveled in his chair. His eyes were pale blue, almost colorless, and they missed nothing. He'd been human once. Now he was something else. Something that had spent too long in the dark, staring at screens, trading secrets for survival. "The Bureau put out a termination order on you 6 hours ago," he said. "Level Omega. That's the big one. The kind they only use when they're scared." "The Bureau doesn't get scared." Soren smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Everyone gets scared, Kalen. Even monsters. Especially monsters." She sat down across from him. The chair was old. The leather was cracked. It smelled like dust and old coffee and the ghosts of all the other desperate people who'd sat in this same spot, begging for answers they couldn't find anywhere else. "I need to know why," she said. "I need to know what's in that file. The real file, not the tactical disposition report they told me it was." Soren leaned back, steepled his fingers, took a long, slow breath. "You know my fee. I know. And you know I don't take credit. I know." He studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded just once and turned back to his console. "Give me the spike." She hesitated. The spike was evidence. The spike was a weapon. The spike was the only thing standing between her and the possibility that she was wrong about everything. She gave it to him. He plugged it into his console. His fingers flew across the interface, faster than she could follow. Lines of code cascaded down the screen. Encryption layers peeled away like the skins of an onion, each one revealing another layer beneath. "This isn't a tactical file," he said, his voice flat. "This is a personnel file. Yours, specifically. Every mission you've ever run. Every kill you've ever made. Every piece of intel you've ever touched. I know that part." "No, you don't." He turned the screen toward her. "Look." She looked. The file was massive. Hundreds of pages. Thousands of entries. But the pattern was clear once he knew what to look for. Every mission she'd ever run had been compromised. Not by her. By someone else. Someone inside the Bureau. Every piece of intel she'd ever handled had been leaked to the Verity within 48 hours of her receiving it. Every kill she'd ever made had been anticipated, countered, or rendered meaningless by forces she couldn't see. She'd been a pawn. A decoy. A distraction. While she was running operations, believing she was making a difference, someone else had been using her as cover for something much larger. Something much darker. "There's a mole," Soren said. "Deep inside the Bureau. Has been for years. And you were their unwitting accomplice. Every time you ran a mission, you created chaos. Noise. Smoke. And while everyone was looking at you, the mole was moving pieces into place." Kalen felt the cold again. But this time, it wasn't the cold of fear. It was the cold of rage. Deep. Slow. The kind that didn't burn hot and fast. The kind that froze everything in its path and never, ever thawed. "Who?" Soren shook his head. "The file doesn't say. The mole's identity is redacted. But there's a connection. A name that keeps appearing in the metadata." He pulled up a single line of text. A name she recognized. Director Eris Thorne. Henla. Her mentor. The man who'd recruited her out of the orbital academies. Who'd trained her. Who'd told her she was special. That she was making a difference. That she was humanity's shield. "Thorne is the one who ordered your termination," Soren said quietly. "The authorization code is his. Signed and sealed 6 hours before you were given the mission." She stood up. The chair scraped against the floor, a harsh, grating sound that seemed to echo in the small room. "Kalen." She stopped. "There's more." She turned. Soren's face was pale. Paler than usual. His colorless eyes were wide, and for the first time since she'd known him, he looked afraid. The file isn't just a personnel record. It's a key, a cryptographic key to a Verity military network. If you delivered it, the Bureau would have had access to every Verity fleet movement, every troop deployment, every strategic plan for the next decade. So why try to kill me? Why not just let me deliver it? Because the key is a trap. The Verity planted it. They wanted the Bureau to find it, to think they'd won. And then, when the Bureau plugged it into their systems, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Backdoor. Trojan. Digital genocide. The Verity had set a trap. The Bureau had walked right into it. And Kalen had been the bait. But someone inside the Bureau, someone who wasn't Thorne, had tried to stop it. The dead sleeper. The officer with the scarred cheek. They'd damaged the toxin delivery system. They'd looked the other way. They'd given her a chance. Why? Because they were human. Because even in the darkness, even in the lies, even in the cold machinery of intelligence and betrayal, there were still people who believed in something. Who believed in her. She picked up the spike, held it in her palm, felt the weight of it. What are you going to do? Soren asked. She looked at him, really looked at him, saw the fear in his eyes, saw the hope, saw the small, fragile thing that still believed, against all evidence, that one person could make a difference. I'm going to do what I was trained to do, she said. I'm going to secure the asset. Which asset? She smiled. That same not nice smile. The smile of someone who had nothing left to lose and everything to gain. Me. She walked out of Soren's office and into the underbelly of New Mercury. The corridors were narrow here. The lighting was poor. The air smelled like sewage and desperation and the slow, grinding decay of a city that had grown too fast and too big and too hungry. She had a plan. Not a good plan. Not a safe plan. But a plan. Step 1. Find the mole. Step 2. Find out why. Step 3. Make sure the Verity trap never got triggered. Step 4. Survive. Step 5. Make Director Eris Thorne explain, face to face, why he'd signed her death warrant. She pulled out her backup comm unit. A cheap civilian model, the kind you could buy at any corner market for 5 credits, and dialed a number she'd memorized years ago and never thought she'd use. A voice answered. Female. Tired. Familia. You've reached the office of Captain Mira Vallis, New Mercury Security Force. State your business or hang up. Mira. It's Kalen. A long pause. She could hear breathing on the other end. Fust. Shallow. Kalen. The Bureau said you were dead. The Bureau lies. Another pause. Longer this time. What do you need? I need a safe house. I need weapons. I need a way off this rock if things go sideways. Things always go sideways with you. That's why you love me. Mira laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. The laugh of someone who'd seen too much and slept too little. I don't love you, Kalen. I tolerate you. There's a difference. There really isn't. Fine. There's an abandoned maintenance depot on level 14, Sector 9. The key is under the 3rd conduit panel to the left of the main door. Don't be followed. The line went dead. Kalen slipped the comm unit into her pocket and started walking. Level 14 was a long way down. A long way into the dark. A long way from the neon and the lies and the people who wanted her dead. She took the stairs. The maintenance depot was exactly what it sounded like. A cavernous space filled with broken machinery, rusted tools, and the ghosts of 1,000 forgotten repairs. The air was cold and dry and tasted like metal. Kalen found a key exactly where Mira had said it would be. The door opened with a groan that echoed off the distant walls. She stepped inside and locked the door behind her. The depot had been abandoned for at least a decade. The lighting was emergency only, a dim, reddish glow that made everything look like it was bleeding. She found a corner, cleared away the debris, and sat down with her back against the wall. She had 12 hours, maybe less. The Bureau would send someone to check on her eventually. When they didn't find her, they'd send someone else, and then someone else, and then a team, and then a kill squad. She needed to move faster than they could track. She pulled out her personal storage implant reader, a small, handheld device that looked like a child's toy, and uploaded the file from her implant. The text filled the screen. She read it. Every word, every line, every cold, calculated entry. And, as she read, the shape of the betrayal became clear. The mole wasn't one person. It was a network. A conspiracy of officers, analysts, and field agents who decided, somewhere along the way, that humanity couldn't win the war against the Veriti, that the only way to survive was to surrender, to collaborate, to sell out their own species in exchange for safety, comfort, and a place at the table when the Veriti finally took over. Director Eris Thorne wasn't the mole. He was worse. He was the recruiter, the man who'd identified potential collaborators and brought them into the fold, who'd used his position, his authority, his charisma to convince them that betrayal was the only logical choice. And Kalen, brilliant, loyal, deadly Kalen, had been too useful to recruit, too dangerous to trust, too valuable to let live. So they tried to kill her. And when that failed, they'd try again, and again, and again, until she was dead or they were. She closed the reader, sat in the darkness, listened to the distant hum of the city above her, the endless churn of 10 billion people who had no idea that their government was eating itself from the inside. What do I do? She could run, disappear, change her face, her name, her DNA. There were places in the outer colonies where no one asked questions, where a woman with her skills could live a quiet, anonymous life until she died of old age or boredom. But running meant letting them win, letting the conspiracy continue, letting the Veriti walk right through the door that the traitors were holding open. She thought about the young Veriti dockworker, the one with the pale green scales and the earnest, unblinking eyes. He wasn't the enemy. He was a kid doing a job, trying to survive, just like everyone else. She thought about the officer with the scarred cheek, the one who'd seen her in the crate and looked away. He'd risked everything to give her a chance. A Veriti, an enemy, a man who'd looked at her and seen not a threat, but a person. This is why we fight. Not because we hate them, because we love us, because we believe in something bigger than our own survival. She stood up. The safe house had a weapons locker in the back. Mira had stocked it well. Kinetic pistols, plasma rifles, ceramic blades, explosive charges, everything a woman on the run might need to make a very loud statement. She armed herself, not for a war, for a conversation, the kind of conversation that ended with someone bleeding on the floor. Then, she sat down again, closed her eyes, waited. Mira arrived at 0400. She was tall, broad-shouldered, with a face that had seen too many fights and a jaw that had never learned to quit. She wore the gray uniform of the new Mercury Security Force, and she carried herself like someone who expected trouble and was looking forward to it. "You look like shit," Mira said, setting down a duffel bag that clinked with the sound of more weapons. "I feel like shit." "Good. Keeps you honest." Mira sat down across from her. "So, talk." Kalen told her everything. The mission, the spike, the toxin, the file, the mole, the conspiracy. Director Thorne. When she finished, Mira was silent for a long time. Her face was unreadable. The face of a cop who'd heard worse and learned not to react. "You have proof. Enough. Not enough to take to the courts. Not enough to go public. But enough to make people ask questions. And questions are the one thing Thorne can't survive." Mira nodded slowly. "What's your play?" "I'm going to walk into Bureau headquarters. I'm going to walk up to Thorne's office. And I'm going to ask him face to face why he tried to kill me." "That's suicide." "Probably. And you're okay with that?" Kalen thought about it. Really thought about it. The weight of the ceramic blade in her boot. The cold rage in her chest. The small, fragile hope that somewhere, in the darkness, there were still people worth saving. "No," she said. "But I'm okay with the alternative even less." Mira stood up, walked to the door, stopped. "I can't help you with this," she said. "If I'm seen with you, they'll kill me too. And I have a daughter." "I know, but I can give you this." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small data chip. Thorne's schedule, his security rotations, the access codes for the executive level. "I've been saving it for a rainy day." "Why?" Mira looked at her. For just a moment, the mask slipped, and Kalen saw something underneath. Something raw, something angry, something that had been waiting for this moment for a very long time. "Because my partner asked the same questions you're asking. 2 years ago, he disappeared. The Bureau said he died in a training accident. I never believed them." She held out the chip. Kalen took it. "Make it hurt," Mira said. Then she walked out the door and didn't look back. Bureau headquarters was a monolithic tower in the heart of New Mercury's government district. Black glass, sharp angles, the kind of building that looked like it was designed to intimidate. Kaylin walked through the front door at 0800 just as the morning shift was changing. She wore a bureau uniform, stolen from a laundry chute, same as before, and she moved with the easy confidence of someone who belonged there. The security checkpoint was staffed by 3 guards. She knew 2 of them by name, had shared drinks with them, had lied to them about where she was going and what she was doing. "Hey, Kaylin," one of them said. "Thought you were on leave." "Cut it short. Thorne wants to see me." The guard nodded. "Wave her through. The lies we tell, the faces we wear, the way we become the masks until we forget there was ever anything underneath." The elevator ride to the executive level took 45 seconds. She spent them checking her weapons. The kinetic pistol was concealed under her jacket. The ceramic blade was in her boot. The explosive charge was in her pocket, set to a dead man's switch. If she died, the charge would detonate. Not enough to kill anyone else. Just enough to destroy the data in her implant. Just enough to make sure the conspiracy's secrets died with her. The elevator doors opened. The executive level was quiet. Plush carpets. Soft lighting. The kind of silence that came from good soundproofing and better security. Thorne's office was at the end of the hall. Double doors. Mahogany. Old earth wood, imported at enormous expense because Thorne was the kind of man who appreciated the finer things and wanted everyone to know it. She walked to the doors. Didn't knock. Opened them. Thorne was sitting behind his desk. He was older than she remembered. His hair was gray. His face was lined. And his eyes were the same cold, calculating blue that had once made her feel safe. He looked up. Saw her. Didn't flinch. "Kaylin," he said. "I was wondering when you'd show up. You tried to kill me." "I did. No denied. No excuse." Just the flat, calm acknowledgement of a man who had made a decision and accepted the consequences. "Why?" Thorne leaned back in his chair, steepled his fingers, took a long, slow breath. "Because you're dangerous. Not to me. To the plan." "What plan?" "The end of the war." He said it like it was simple, like it was obvious. The Verity had been fighting us for 40 years. 40 years of death, destruction, and stalemate. Neither side can win. Neither side can afford to lose. So we're stuck, bleeding out one soldier at a time until there's nothing left. So you decided to surrender. I decided to negotiate, to find a way out. The Verity are willing to talk. They're willing to offer terms. But they won't negotiate with a government that's still trying to win. So we have to lose. Deliberately. Carefully. In a way that looks like defeat, but is really a transition. You're going to sell out humanity. I'm going to save it. His voice rose for the first time. A crack in the mask. "Do you have any idea what happens if the war continues? Another 40 years of this? Another 100? We'll destroy ourselves. We'll burn our own worlds to ash and call it victory. This is the only way." Kaylin walked toward his desk. Slowly. Deliberately. Her hand rested on the kinetic pistol under her jacket. "You could have asked," she said. "You could have come to me. Told me the truth. Let me make my own choice. Would you have agreed?" She stopped. No. She wouldn't have. She would have fought. She would have found another way. She would have died before she surrendered. "That's what I thought," Thorne said. "You're too loyal. Too stubborn. Too human. You would have stood in the way. You would have gotten people killed. So I made the choice for you. You tried to kill me. I try to protect the plan. The plan is bigger than you. Bigger than me. Bigger than any one person." She pulled out the pistol, pointed it at his chest. He didn't move. Didn't blink. "Go ahead," he said. "Kill me. It won't change anything. The conspiracy is bigger than me too. If I die, someone else takes my place. The plan continues." "I know. Then, why are you here?" She lowered the pistol. Not because she'd changed her mind. Because she'd made a different choice. "I'm here to tell you that I'm not going to kill you," she said. "I'm going to expose you. I'm going to take the file, the real file, and I'm going to give it to every news outlet, every government watchdog, every Verity diplomat who will listen. I'm going to shine a light on the conspiracy, and I'm going to watch it burn." Thorne's face went pale. "You'll start a civil war." "No, I'll end one." She holstered the pistol. "The Verity don't want your surrender. They want peace. Real peace. The kind that comes from trust, not betrayal. And they'll never trust you. But they might trust me." She turned and walked to the door. "Kaylin." She stopped. "If you do this, you'll be hunted. By the Bureau. By the conspiracy. By everyone who has something to lose. You'll never be safe again." She looked back at him. At the man who had been her mentor, her friend, her father in all but blood. At the man who had tried to kill her. "I was never safe," she said. I was just too blind to see it. She walked out the door. The news broke 3 hours later. Kaylin stood on a rooftop in the upper levels of New Mercury, watching the screens flicker to life across the cityscape. Her face was everywhere. Her name was everywhere. The file was everywhere. Breaking. Bureau conspiracy exposed. Director Thorne arrested. Humanity's future uncertain. She watched the crowds gather in the streets below. Some cheering, some shouting, some just standing, staring, trying to understand how the world had changed so quickly. Mira stood beside her, silent, solid, the only person Kaylin had called before going public. Well, Mira said, "You did it. We did it. What now?" Kaylin looked out at the city, at the 10 billion people who had no idea what came next, at the stars beyond the dome, with a Verity fleet waited, watching, wondering. "Now we talk," she said. "Now we find out if we could be better than we've been. And if we can't?" Kaylin smiled, a real smile this time, tired, hopeful, human. "Then we try again." She turned away from the edge, walked toward the stairs, toward the unknown, toward the long, hard work of building something new from the ashes of the old. Behind her, the screens flickered. Her face faded. The news cycle moved on. But the truth remained. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, a Verity officer with a scarred cheek raised a glass of something strong and smiled. The war wasn't over. But maybe, just maybe it could be.